Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Anbernic RG35XX This device was sent to me for review by Anbernic, but as usual they have no input in what I say and they haven't seen this video ahead of time. And just a side note, I'm still getting over a bit of a cold, so if I sound off or I look off, that's the reason. Still a little bit sick, but I want to start doing some more videos because there's a lot of things on my plate right now. Okay, so for anybody looking at this and thinking, hey, that looks a little bit familiar, there's a reason for that. This is basically the newer version of the Anbernic RG35P. And that's this old guy right here, and the only real difference between the two, besides obviously the processor and addition of Wi-Fi and things we'll talk about, is the aspect ratio. The old 351P was a 3:2 aspect ratio, and the new 35XX is a 4:3 aspect ratio. Seriously, they're both basically the exact same size, minus a little bit smaller on the width for the 35XX, and they basically look the exact same. And to me, and I guess a lot of other people too, that's a great thing, because the 351P is something that a lot of people loved, and myself included. The form factor and the aspect ratio was a big part of it, but a lot of different reasons, and this is just more of the same, but newer. And so I'll leave the specs up on screen for this, and I'm not going to spend too much time on them. If you've watched any of my videos on the RG35XX Plus, this is the horizontal version of that, except with sticks added. Everything else is the same. So that means that this handheld can play up to Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and PSP, but I wouldn't buy it for those systems. However, everything up to PlayStation 1 is great, and it's a good idea to purchase this for that. You also have HDMI, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, except it's only for gamepads and not for audio, and this is also Linux only. We'll talk about software a little bit later on. Pricing wise, this is $63 for the first 48 hours that it goes on sale, and that starts January 5th. After that, it goes up to $68, and everything is plus shipping, of course. Lastly, there's 3 different colors. There's the transparent purple that you're going to see in this video because that's what I chose. There's transparent white, and then there's black. I have to say, after seeing some more pictures and videos of the transparent white, I really wish I would have went for that one, but I picked the purple because it's the same as the 35XX purple. But I don't think you can go wrong with any 3 of these colors. They're actually really nice. Okay, so let's just jump right in. And I'm going to make this a quick, concise video because I just don't think there's a lot to talk about for this device. And just making a 30-minute video is just going to waste your time. So let's talk about a quick, concise, just description of what this is, what this does, and if it should be something that you should buy. Let's start with the D-pad, and the D-pad feels pretty good. They've definitely made improvements over the years, and it's a lot looser feeling than the 35XX original, for example. And it's very similar to the one in the 35XX Plus, if not the exact same. However, you're still prone to false diagonals with this D-pad, so while it does feel a little bit better, it's still not perfect. The sticks are recessed in, exactly like the RG351P, making this a very pocketable device, and it's easy to just take in and out of your pockets as you need to. Still using switch sticks here until Anbernic discovers other types. Buttons feel pretty good, and so do the triggers. No real deal breakers that I can see or that I felt using the handheld, minus the false diagonal issue, which we just kind of have to get used to. Everything else is just as it should be. Everything you would expect in just a retro handheld. We have start and select on the front, volume on the left side, power on the right, and don't forget power is on the right. So don't constantly push the function button at the top and then wonder why the handheld isn't turning on. I definitely have not done that so many times so far. There's down-firing speakers with 2 SD card slots, then the headphone jack, USB-C slots, mini HDMI slot, and the function button at the top. In case you're wondering, use the USB-C slot labeled DC to charge. On the back, we have nice grippy pads. My favorite thing that Anbernic adds to most devices. Overall, the device is decently comfortable. I think if you have larger hands, you might have an issue with just kind of how small this is. It's not really a huge device, so a bit on the smaller end, but for my hands and for anybody that's used the 351P and they like that, it's more of the same. And I find it's pretty comfortable for longer periods of time to just hold it like this and have a good time. Just to give you some size comparisons, here's some devices next to it for scale. And for some competition in the same price bracket, there's the TrimUI Smart Pro. Then we have the RG35XX Plus. Then I have my PSP 2000. Then of course we have the RG351P. And then lastly, in case you don't have any of those, you might have a Nintendo 3DS, and this is the new 3DS. Software-wise, we're running the exact same as the RG35XX Plus, which means if you watched my video on that, the same bugs apply here. Same annoying noise jumping in and out of games, same annoying just software as a whole. Now, I don't want to be too mean on the software, because the software experience will be personal preference. If you're used to something like Garlic OS or just custom firmware in general, then yeah, you're going to want to wait until it's ready for this, because right now it just isn't. However, if you're someone who's used to buying devices and using whatever firmware that it comes with, so just stock OS, it's not the worst that I've seen, but it's not the best either. I think most of my audience right now is used to custom firmware, and so that's why my general recommendation is just to wait for custom firmware, but I don't know how long that's going to take to get something that's functional and really usable on this device because it's not there yet. Game-wise, like I mentioned before, everything up to and including PlayStation 1 is great here, and what you'd buy this device for. For Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and PSP, my personal opinion is that some games will play great, but most won't. And as usual in this scenario, I would say skip this if you wanted those systems. And I'm not going to over-represent just how good N64 is by cherry-picking the good games. So you can see on screen just the N64 performance in random games that I picked. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, hey, I really want Nintendo 64 and I want Dreamcast, then my suggestion for the cheapest device that can actually play all of Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast is the Retroid Pocket 2S. So check that out if it's something you want. I mentioned this would be a short video, so let's start wrapping up because I don't want to waste your time. Are you looking for a small, compact, pocketable handheld? Then yeah, this is a really good choice, and it's only going to get better as we get custom firmware and time goes on. So while I might not say that you should rush out and buy it right now, I do think that if we revisit this in maybe a month or two, this will probably be at the top of a lot of people's lists because it's a cheap, horizontal handheld. There isn't a lot like this, and it's doing everything that it should do and not really any real big deal breakers. For me, I much prefer horizontal devices over verticals, and the 35XX Plus didn't wow me, so I'm probably going to stick with my Miu Mini Plus as my little mini vertical. And I like this, so I probably will end up using this at some point in the future, but not yet. So that ties into the next question that I usually answer, and am I going to be using this device at all? And the answer is no, not yet. I'm going to be waiting for custom firmware to get to where I want it to be, and just a lot more improvements and things like that, because I just don't like stock, and I'm going to be headed to CES in a few days. I was going to bring this, but then I looked at my collection of devices and custom firmwares and everything, and this just doesn't do anything better than those do right now. Maybe in the future, but for right now, I'm going to stick with other devices until this gets there. But like I said, that's just me. So if you don't have an issue with stock firmware and you're okay with just running it out of the box, then there's nothing really that's a big deal breaker with this. It's just not as good as it should be. At the end of the year, I don't think this device will win any awards, but it's a solid device that I think would make a lot of people happy if it's something they're looking for. That's going to be it for this one. Is the H model on your radar at all? I think Anbernic's releasing a few too many devices really quickly lately, and it's hard to keep up even as somebody who's just doing this for a living. So hoping that these manufacturers just maybe slow down a little bit in 2024 just to give us a chance to catch up because it's hard to keep up. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.